This podcast is brought to you by the Dunfield Retirement Residence, a casually elegant retirement community located at Yonge and Eglinton in the heart of Midtown Toronto. Customized living options complement your independent, active lifestyle. Learn more at thedunfield.com.
Hey everybody, welcome back. We're the Menschwarmers. I'm Jamie. I'm here with my co-host Gabe. Gabe, how you doing, buddy?
Happy Hanukkah.
Yeah, it is pretty much Hanukkah. When you're listening to this, it should be Hanukkah. Hopefully everyone gets a chance to recommend this to your friends and relatives around the hanukkiah, around the Hanukkah table, around a plate of latkes. I don't know what we do around Hanukkah, around the sufganiyot.
We're good. I think Hanukkah is just around the menorah, maybe around the hanukkiah, as you said. I'm excited as it is my 2.5-year-old son's favorite holiday because there are candles. I think, traditionally in Judaism, they say that Shabbat is the holiest day of the year, and it happens every week in comparison to all of the other the holidays. For my son, Shabbat is the greatest holiday of the year, as well as Hanukkah, because there are candles involved. Any sort of flickering light is really what takes a 2-year-old to the next level. And for him, Shabbat and Hanukkah are 1 and 2 in terms of the best Jewish holidays.
Sure.
So it's here.
Yeah, Hanukkah's here. I'm very excited. We wanted to take the opportunity to sort of do a little bit of a year-end wrap-up, talk about, 8 crazy Jewish sports stories from the year. Maybe not crazy, but one story for each night.
At the beginning of this year, Jamie and I sat down and we said we would be very happy with one notable Jewish sports story. And at the end of the year, we have 8.
Right. We only thought we would have enough content for one podcast, but instead we had many more. But before that, we should just go through some Jewish sports news of the week, the last few weeks that's been going on. I was very sad last week because I was really concerned that Gene Simmons had died. But it turned out it wasn't the Kiss singer who had died. It was actually Henry Kissinger. So everyone rejoiced. Everyone had a real good time on the internet with that. No love lost here for Kissinger. I think it's worth mentioning he had some real interesting sports connections that are like, I guess, just what happens when you're one of the most influential Americans of the last 100 years.
Yeah,
and you live 100 years.
His presence everywhere matters. Again, I being the TV-addled, brain-rot millennial, could only think of, it is I, the man who drafted the Paris Peace Accords. No one can know that I lost my glasses in the toilet.
Yes, of course, referencing his brief turn as a Simpsons character. But there were a few. First of all, establishing their bona fides as the evil empire of sports. Of course, the New York Yankees issued a press statement regarding his passing. He was a lifelong friend of the Yankees organization, I guess, and a friend of the Steinbrenner family. Like all of this tracks, for a man.
I feel like the Steinbrenners would be like, this guy's notable. Let's invite him to a Yankees game, and then he's a Yankee.
People also pointed out on Twitter that somehow he was made an honorary member of the Harlem Globetrotters back in the 70s. I can only assume some sort of friendship with Abe Saperstein or something like that led to that.
You'd hope it wasn't them saying like, wouldn't it be funny if this old Jewish man played basketball?
Yeah, that is sort of funny. I think he'd probably be the last person you'd put on the Globetrotters in terms of making things happen. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is that
he can actually do a backflip 360 dunk. That's why they put him on it.
Maybe he was more spry back in his early days. But he was also an incredibly influential person in the growth of U.S. soccer. He was the chairman of the North American Soccer League board of directors back in the 70s as well, like post White House. So again, I don't know how this veritable zealot figured into sports as much as he did, given that he was this stumpy little academic. But Kissinger is dead, and I don't know if we're honoring his sports legacy so much as we are mentioning it.
Well, I think we're mentioning it. I think he's a notable Jew that maybe watched a sports game, notably.
Right. In terms of someone who passed, who I think should be remembered fondly, we did want to talk briefly about George Cohen. He was, very influential Canadian American businessman. He brought McDonald's to Canada. Like, I think that's probably the first line of his obituary.
And sort of an icon of the Canadian Jewish scene. George is relevant to us for a number of reasons. The particular one, as we talked about in this podcast, is, and I'm going to ask Jamie this question. George Cohen is notable for suing the Rosedale Golf Club for its anti-Jewish policy. I know you might know the answer to this question, but what year do you think this happened?
I mean, I know the answer to this. But the only answer that's acceptable is much later than you would like, right?
Yes.
He took it to court. I think it was like 2002, 2003,
2004.
something like that.
He took it to court. So,
well, okay, so that's probably when the case was heard. So that makes sense. That he probably would have brought the action a few years earlier.
Oh, that's and we're too Jewish of a podcast. That's Jamie doing his lawyer talk corner.
Yeah, that's right. Anyways, I mean, that's I actually, as a lawyer and member of the Ontario Bar, I could look up when the case was brought if I wanted to, but I'm not going to right now. Anyways, he did sue, I guess, to get into the Rosedale Golf Club, and based on what I read in some of the obituaries, remained a happy member, and I think he had a magnanimous approach to it, just saying like, that might have been an element of the club before, but that wasn't the people he played with or he knew there. And I hope that it's continued to progress. I have no idea. No Jew has ever mentioned to me being a member of Rosedale. So, if you're out there and a member of the Rosedale Golf Club,
it is my understanding,
and want to tell us what it's like these days, let us know.
It is my understanding that George and his son Mark, the commissioner of the CFL for a while, so relevant to sports, actually did join the club.
They did,
and we're the first Jewish members of that club. So, if any other Jewish members of the Rosedale want to talk about it, we are all ears.
Moving on to a few news items from the world of college football. The season just sort of wrapped up. The playoffs are coming up around New Year's, and the bowl games will all be going on this year. There's a few Christmas themed bowls, but there's never been a Hanukkah themed bowl. So maybe if we can get a sponsor together someday, we can do like the matzah bowl.
Yeah, the matzah bowl would be good. The Menschwarmers bowl, the Mensch bowl. We could have Northwestern play Brandeis in the Mensch bowl. That or NYU play Brandeis, just two traditionally Jewish schools, like the Harvard-Yale game.
But one of the most, I'm going to say, surprising things I've certainly read about or thought about in our time covering Jews and sports happened this year. Before you say what this is,
I think we talk a lot on the show about Mike Jacobs All-Stars. I think this would qualify as the Mike Jacobs All-Stars of football positions. Just generally, it's not just somebody's name. The whole concept that Jamie is about to tell you guys is a Mike Jacobs All-Star, just to begin with. Yeah,
so Brigham Young University, which if you know anything about it, you'll know that it's a Mormon university, had a Jewish starting quarterback this year.
How this happened? There's a guy on TikTok who goes around asking BYU students if they would rather have $5 million or 5 minutes with Mormon prophet Joseph Smith.
Right.
And the majority of people take Joseph Smith. I think that Jake Retzlaff, the name of the quarterback, would answer differently.
Yeah, I mean, it seems bizarre to me that non-Mormons go to BYU in the first place. I guess for sports purposes, there's some non-Mormons who joined because, Division I basketball and football.
We could get deep on this, but I think the Mormons sort of like the Jews and Zionism almost to the point of like a fetishization.
Yeah, I think there's some of that. I don't know exactly. I can't speak to it directly enough because I don't even know if I've ever met a Mormon. We don't really see a lot of them over here.
I don't have much experience either. All I know is that you travel to Utah. I've been to Utah. You think, you don't expect to see polygamist families. And then you do. You're walking down the street and then there's some sister wives in matching dresses and you go, oh, that's Utah. When it comes to Retzlaff, as we mentioned earlier, I dug a little bit into this. I did some research. There are currently 5 Jewish students at BYU. BYU is a school of 32,000 people. There are 5 Jewish students. I know this because the University of Utah has a Hillel chapter that publishes an update.
But that's Utah's like a public. Utah's like a public school. Like it's more. I don't know. I assume there's more Jews there. It is a Hillel.
The BYU Jewish students are technically part of the University of Utah Jewish Hillel campus. So there are 5 Jewish BYU students, and 3 of them are attendees of the law school. So
Wow.
if you actually want to go deep into it, there are 2 Jewish BYU students, one of whom is Jake Retzlaff.
Wow.
We're not done.
He started.
It goes even further. We talked earlier about, I sort of mentioned there might be a bit of a fetishization here. I think the team, which like the rest of the school is 99% Mormon, somewhat viewed Jake as a bit of a oddity. So this year for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the coach of BYU football, whose name escapes me, hired a kosher caterer to bring in a Rosh Hashanah meal for all of the players in honor of Jake Retzlaff.
Well, that's nice of them.
I know it is nice of them, but it's a little bit surprising and perhaps maybe over the top. He does say he is a proud Reformed Jew and he belongs to a synagogue and is relatively observant. But I think I feel like if you're the only Jew at a party and everyone comes and is like mazel tov to every single thing you say or do, you'd feel a little bit weirder. Just as to continue the story, I found an article from sort of a Western American Jewish newspaper where they interviewed the rabbi of Congregation Kol Ami in Salt Lake City, a guy named Sam Spector. And Sam Spector's first, comment on hearing about Jake Retzlaff was, Jake, he said this to Jake, Jake, I've always thought BYU needed more Jewish quarterbacks. And now they've got many. To make it even funnier, Jake's competition for the job was a 22-year-old who just got back from his missionary work. He left in the middle to do his Mormon proselytizing, a boy named Cade Finnegan. And now that
BYU often has the advantage of suiting up 26-year-olds because they've all done 3 or 4 years of mission work.
Exactly.
So Retzlaff is the rare 21-year-old junior or whatever. It's rare for BYU to even have someone that young. But anyways, we'll see what happens with him if he plays for BYU next year, if he gets a shot at the starting gig. After injury he filled in. So we'll see what happens next year. Talking about another Jewish pivot, we wanted to mention that unfortunately JT Daniels, quarterback this past year at Rice University, has announced his retirement from football. He was medically retired. He had multiple concussions during this year and decided to retire rather than pursue
we call it
an NFL career.
It's not Passover. Should we call it Kitniot University?
He had a really promising young career. He started off at USC. He transferred to Georgia, where he sort of lost out on the starting job to Stetson Bennett, who ultimately won the national championship at Georgia, and transferred again to West Virginia, and then finally to Rice. Very weird thing where he played in six seasons. I think for people who had some idea of him, it would be wasn't he a prospect a long time ago? It's he graduated high school in 2017, I guess, or 2018. It's a long time to be in the pros, or sorry, in the college, in the high ranks in college. So we'll keep an eye on JT. Hopefully he has some success with coaching. We'll see what's in store for him. He's a smart guy. Obviously, hopefully he's gone to some class in the last 6 years of being at university. Moving on to baseball, just a few hirings in the front office. I want to talk about Craig Breslow, who was recently hired.
We chatted with Gabrielle Starr about him. That makes, we're adding to the number of Jewish executives in the Major League Baseball.
He's now the CEO or chief baseball officer for the Boston Red Sox.
The CBO.
And Gabe Kapler was recently hired as the assistant GM for the Marlins. Probably there's some growth opportunity there. They lost Kim Ng this year, so room for him to sort of move up in the front office potentially in the future.
It's also, while we talk about baseball, I just want to go back for a second and mention that one of the prodigal sons, a Jew, has returned to the homeland, which is to say that Brad Ausmus has joined the New York Yankees as their bench coach.
Oh.
So as of about a week ago, maybe 10 days ago, he was manager of Detroit, manager
right.
Los Angeles. And now after a year in Oakland, the next bench coach of the New York Yankees is Brad Ausmus. So between him and Harrison Bader, the traditional Mets territory is slowly infecting the traditional Yankees territory.
All right, let's take a quick break and then come back with 8 stories of Jewish sports for 8 nights of Hanukkah. want to start off our first story with something that, has been a touchstone for our podcast as long as we've been doing it, something we've always been focused on, which is Team Israel baseball. Team Israel participated this year in the World Baseball Classic, in the fourth edition, the delayed fourth edition of the WBC, right? Because there would have been a tournament, I think it was the fifth one, but there would have been a tournament in 2020, but then there wasn't because of the Olympics and because of COVID. So World Baseball Classic came back. Israel had automatically qualified because of its success back in 2017. And things started off strong. Israel won a game against Nicaragua. It won 3-1.
Thanks to a magical hit from friend of the pod and former guest Spencer Horwitz.
And we should say Spencer
and had a big Macher moment.
Lined, sinking, and it gets down, base hit. Here comes a pinch runner, Goldfarb. Here comes a throw way over the head of the catcher all the way to the backstop. Israel's tied the game, and now they're set up to go ahead.
I remember trying to stream the game in the parking lot of a trampoline facility that my daughter was going to a birthday party at while she took a nap in the car, and trying to keep it down while Spencer had his big hit. So they won that first game in Miami, in front of a crowd of 20,000. I think it was pretty exciting for everybody. But unfortunately did not find a way to duplicate that success. They got perfect gamed.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, they got perfect gamed in 8 innings by Puerto Rico. It wasn't ideal. They got blanked by Dominican Republic as well, and then lost to Venezuela. So not a great showing. However, they did automatically qualify for the next World Baseball Classic. So, Israel baseball is still strong. Still doing well relative to, the country's baseball history, let's say.
the young baseball history.
And the game is growing. That should lead right into story number 2 that I wanted to mention, which is that Israel baseball has a new manager. It had it going into the season, and that's Ian Kinsler, the Detroit Tiger and Texas Ranger former All-Star who's been retired now for the last 4 or 5 years, I'm going to say. He's now part of the Texas Rangers organization. And I think it was an incredibly meaningful moment what happened during the Texas Rangers time in the World Series.
Extremely emotional moment.
Yeah, when Ian Kinsler came out in a Team Israel jersey and threw out the first pitch. That was, I think, a really big deal, especially in the aftermath of the events that occurred on October 7th. To see, he had, it was during the ALCS, not the World Series. I'm just confusing the timing. On the other side of the field, playing for the Houston Astros, Alex Bregman had drawn him again to David on his hat during some of the games. And that was shown. I think it was a moment of real support in baseball and sports for Israel and everything.
Both of whom appeared in the video curated, in addition to Spencer Horwitz, curated by Mr. Kevin Euclid, who we talked about on our previous episode with Gabrielle Starr.
Yeah,
talking about being proud to be Jewish in yarmulkes or hats, or straight at the camera with their let's call it chutzpah.
Sure. So I thought that was a beautiful moment. It was really nice to see everyone react in a positive way at that time to what Kinsler was doing. So kudos to him. And, we'll keep following Israel baseball. The WBC isn't for a few years, but there's always stuff going on. European baseball championships, other qualifying events, things like that. I think there's no baseball at the 24 Olympics, but 28 sounds like it might be happening or it might be on the table. So, there's always stuff going on for Israel baseball. Moving on to our third story, something a little closer to home, Gabe, which is that you and I had a chance to cover the 2023 Canadian Open, which took place at Oakdale Golf and Country Club in Toronto, the traditionally Jewish country club.
The creation of such an iconic moment from notable non-Jew Nick Taylor, but such an iconic moment, hitting a putt on the windy 18th green from forever away, that his iconic putter throw is now the logo of the Canadian Open.
Wow.
So much so that Nick Taylor, Oakdale, the Oakdale moment is enshrined in Canadian golf history forever.
Good pace. Are you serious? Oh my goodness! Glorious and free!
Gabe, you're a little more familiar with Oakdale than I am. I mean, you've played there a few times. You have family members who are members there. How did you feel it acquitted itself as the host of the Canadian Open?
To answer your question, Jamie, I think Oakdale did amazing. I think it was not shy about being sort of a more urban and creative course than a lot of these tournaments have seen. We're used to a lot of really sort of lush. Look at the Hamilton Country Club. It's got a spectacular sampling of the entire Carolinian forest on its property. Or you look at, Glen Abbey, which is these epic, huge greens and wide fairways and big drops and lakes and such like that. And Oakdale isn't that type of course. It's 100 years old. There aren't a lot of flat lies. It goes up and down. And they were really clever with the way they chose to build the course, in that, the front nine was incredibly difficult. There were a few holes, 3, 4, 5, and 6, I think, in a row that played as some of the hardest holes on tour this entire year. And then after that, the back nine was sort of a race to the finish that led to sort of a birdie festival between Nick Taylor and Tommy Fleetwood at the end. So I think the course did amazing. It created an iconic moment. It provided a challenge. Even Rory McIlroy during the tournament said how much he liked playing on Stanley Thompson courses, and how good of a challenge it was and how much fun it was for him to play it. He's a loyal Canadian Open player. And I think he had a lot of fun at Oakdale, and I think they're excited to host it in a couple of years when it goes back.
Yeah, so I hope that we'll get a chance to go back there in 2026 to cover it. And, we wish the club well with recovering from the tournament. Obviously, it's a huge undertaking to do it. I'm sure it'll be back up and running 2024 as normal, without any interruptions. But exciting to see the Jewish club
and business perspective. I think former guest Lawrence Applebaum was completely thrilled with the way the tournament showed.
Yeah. And we'll see what happens in the future, because I think the Canadian Open is sort of in flux in terms of, being on a rotating schedule. I think they want some more, a more concrete rotation, and we'll see if Oakdale can be a part of that in the future. Who knows? Moving on to story number 4, the fourth night. This is, we're filling up this side of the hanukkiah. I want to talk about a really standout year in Israel soccer. This has been a real breakthrough in lots of ways. The first thing that happened this year that was big was that Israel, first of all, rerouted the tournament location, because Israel qualified for the Under-20 World Cup in men's soccer. And the tournament was supposed to be hosted in Indonesia, and they said no.
Not the friendliest country to outsiders, I think we can say, generally speaking, about Indonesia.
Sure, but they were welcome. They were willing to have outsiders come who weren't Jews, or I'm sure they would say, "Oh, it's just that they're Israelis." But regardless, it was rerouted to South America, to Argentina, and Israel came in third. It had this amazing run, lost in the semifinals, but won a third place game against South Korea.
Truly incredible for the young men.
And by virtue of that, it qualified for the Olympics as well. Remember, that was part of it as well. They had to get to a certain point to qualify for next year's Olympics in Paris, which they did, because the Olympics are I can't remember all the mechanisms. The Olympics are like U23 or U21. I can't remember. So it should be most of the squad that was there this year.
U23 is the Olympics.
Yeah. And the Israel, the senior team has not yet qualified for next year's Euro, but it is in the running for qualification for the Euro. So it finished in third in its group for qualifications, and that means that it's referred over to the Nations League, like sort of a play-in tournament. So there's still a chance
tournament.
Exactly. So there's still a chance for Israel to make it to the 2024 Euro, which is pretty exciting. And the women's team just went 5-1 in group play in their Nations League and got promoted up to the B level of their Nations League. So I think it's really boom times for Israel soccer, especially on the younger front. And that's very exciting.
It's really interesting to watch a country, we've talked about this in Israeli hockey and Israeli baseball, but a country that had almost no international sports presence, like play its way up from the very bottom to be in the A tier of the world. Like, it's not like you can just, we have a soccer team, we're going to play against Spain and Italy tomorrow. Like, you sort of have to win through these small levels. Over the last 15 years or so, Israel has started to win tournament after tournament after tournament in that BC tier, and continue to bring their way up into now, at least for the U20, which represents the future of the country's team, to third in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Israel has this unique difficulty of having to qualify in the UEFA along with most of the European teams, as opposed to along with the Asian teams, mostly just because most of their Arab neighbors, I don't know, would revolt, or that's just the way it's been done for long enough that they're going to. Yeah, fine. But regardless, they have this uphill battle. Qualifying for a World Cup is going to be difficult, even with the expanded field. The next World Cup, but obviously it's something we'll continue to focus on. I think not until after the Euro, right? They don't start qualifications until like 2025, I think. But that'll be exciting to watch as well and see how this team translates. Manor Solomon, who's on the senior club now, is playing for Hotspur. After being loaned out to Fulham at the end of last year, I think, or at the beginning of this year. But exciting to see how he does, and hopefully has a good run. It's been a traditionally Jewish club in Tottenham.
Exactly, and it's been a really big year for Tottenham. They are challenging for the championship, and as Solomon is sort of part of that, hopefully feeling healthy and better. There's obviously a lot of, he's had some health challenges staying on the field, but he's on the squad. He's, one of 8 forwards. He's 24 years old. He's pretty young. Like, he's got a bright future ahead of him. And hopefully it's with a team that's got a chance to really do some damage.
Nights 5 and 6, I wanted to dedicate to our national pastime up north. I'm, of course, talking about hockey. So two hockey stories I want to talk about. One is about Andrew Crystal, and he was the first Jew drafted in the NHL this year. Not the first Jew ever drafted, but he was the highest picked Jewish player this year. And he is just killing it in the WHL this year.
Crushing it in Kelowna. Averaging a truly spectacular 2 points a game.
Unreal.
Which is, at any league of hockey, that's pretty exciting to see. Washington, he's an offensive defenseman. I think he's leading the WHL for points by a defenseman, which is a really impressive thing to do in a high-scoring league. Washington themselves, they're sort of a playoff bubble team. And, I think before the season's out, we could see Andrew coming up for at least a cup of coffee, maybe seeing if he can make a difference, getting a shot with a big club. I mean, he's
gonna turn 19 in February. It's pretty young to make it to the show, but maybe just for a few games, like you said, or fill in or something like that.
You get 9 games before you end your rookie eligibility, before you take a contract year out. So, it's if he continues playing this way, it looks like he'll at least, he mentioned on our show that he wasn't expecting to get called up, but there's at some point in the season, maybe if the team has a couple of games to burn one way or another, they could spend the 9 games trying to get him some burn and see how he plays, given how much he's, have to say it, dominating the WHL right now.
The other story I wanted to mention, night 6, is, and this is happening right now, right as we're taping this, seeing how the sausage is made, and you guys can pinpoint when this is happening. But the Vancouver Canucks are hosting the New Jersey Devils tonight. And this is the first game, I believe, that's going to involve all 3 Hughes brothers. Is that correct? All 3
Hughes brothers. At least until there's a U.S. national team game next time.
Hughes Day. It's been called the Hughes Bowl. It's had some other names as well. And, Dana, we've got 3 of the best young players in the NHL going head-to-head tonight. Quinn Hughes, Jack Hughes, and Luke Hughes.
So the story number 6 is just the Hughes brothers' ascendance. Gabe, you said when we were talking about this in preparation that it is possible that all 3 of them will be in contention for some postseason hardware.
Absolutely. We were talking about having a Jewish guy being the top scoring defenseman in the WHL without even mentioning that a Jewish guy, as of this recording, is the top scoring defenseman in the NHL. Last year, Quinn Hughes had a really spectacular season, leading him to be named the captain of the Vancouver Canucks, only the 2nd Jewish captain by our count in NHL history. And he has answered the call and then some. For the first month of the season, he was the leading scorer in the entire NHL. And now, only fighting for that title against his brother, Jack. But, Jack Hughes, he's battled a couple of injuries. But when he's healthy, he is maybe the most dangerous player in the NHL right now in terms of points per game. I think he's still leading the league, even though there's a couple of guys that are ahead of him in total points because Jack missed a couple of weeks. With a hurt shoulder. He's 10th in the league in points, but he's played 7 fewer games than everybody ahead of him.
Amazing.
It's truly
and
amazing.
What about baby brother Luke?
So baby brother Luke is the third one. As we go right now, Quinn is likely the top candidate for the Vezina Trophy right now. Vancouver is one of the top teams in the league, and Quinn is the leading.
Sorry, the Vezina. I thought the Vezina's.
The Vezina. I meant to say the Norris is the player for the top defenseman in the league. He's up with perennial candidate Cale Makar, sort of against each other right now, tied for the leading defensive scorer. But Quinn is a extremely good plus minus on a very good team as the number one defender. Really taking the next step. Jack, leading the league in points per game, even though he's not leading the league in points just because he's played fewer games, but he's had sort of a really, really spectacular start. And perhaps the best rookie in the league has been the third brother, Luke Hughes. So
really? Wow.
Also on New Jersey. So we're talking about a scenario in which Jack could win the Hart Trophy for MVP, Quinn could win the Norris, and Luke could win the Calder for best rookie. So not only, we're getting this earlier, we got 3 brothers in the NHL. That hasn't happened in a long time. We got 3 Jewish brothers in the NHL. That hasn't happened, I think, ever. And now we've got 3 Jewish brothers, all of whom are award candidates. It is, not to get too excited here, quite a time for Jewish hockey.
Quite a time, and I should say for American listeners, you guys should get excited because this Hughes troika, I think, on Team USA
for the next decade.
And hopefully the next Olympics. I think that is going to be a fun story and exciting to see.
Absolutely.
So we wish all the Hughes brothers luck. I'm cheering for the Hughes brothers tonight in this Canucks Devils game as soon as we get off.
Agreed. That's it. We're just hoping for the Hughes brothers. One thing also to mention, one of the only players ahead of the Hughes brothers, ahead of Quinn or Jack in points, is we're going to go with sort of Jewish Artemi Panarin. Definitely Jewish by blood, has a Jewish grandmother. However,
seems like
is a very religious Baptist Christian.
Right.
But, he comes from the Jewish, bloodline, but is, I would say, non-practicing.
Yeah. So story number 7, which is something we haven't talked about before, is a recent story, but we want to talk about it because it's a pretty important one, is that Mark Cuban has sold his majority stake in the Dallas Mavericks, sold it to another Jewish person, Miriam Adelson, the widow of Sheldon Adelson. Yes. The casino magnate billionaire. And the reason why is sort of unclear. I mean, I think that there's some people are talking about different licensing issues of the regional sport networks collapse. I don't really know. Mark Cuban also quit Shark Tank, which he'd been on for a while.
Yep.
And had a lot of success with. I don't know what his next step is. I mean, maybe it's selling, these cost plus pharmaceuticals that he's been working on, providing philanthropy, running for president. I have no idea. But it's exciting. I mean, Cuban's been, I think, one of the most public owners in the last 2 decades. He's been one of the few. He was really one of the first guys to become a presence, certainly in basketball. I mean, who do you have before that? Jerry Jones, maybe. He was a real guy, a real known quantity,
and he's still going to run the team. He's
right.
One of the most notable, I would say, owners in sports. And proudly Jewish and Zionist owner in sports. One thing, interesting. Just to talk about Miriam Adelson a bit. She's led a pretty spectacular life. Born and raised in Israel. Her parents escaped Poland just before the Holocaust and rose to be an extremely notable doctor in Israel.
Wow.
And, sort of married Sheldon Adelson 30 something years ago. And has sort of been, just like Cuban, a big forefront in the prescription drug industry in North America. She was an internal medicine doctor and she specialized in drug use pretty much her entire career.
Interesting.
And now that she's in America outside of Israel, is not just making a difference, it seems, in the casino world, as the Texas deal seems to imply with Cuban, but also spends a lot of time and energy about supporting Jewish causes and positive health outcomes, I would say, for people in America, just like Mark Cuban.
I think both of them will be interesting people to keep an eye on. I mean, Cuban, I don't think he's not going away, certainly. Mm-hmm. He's going to continue to be an outspoken person and, still be involved with the Mavericks as well. So it'd be interesting to see what happens with that. Finishing up our Festival of Lights, I wanted to talk about one last story, a festival of turning out the lights.
The festival.
So this is a story.
Festival of Let's Get Ready to Rumble nights. Festival. I'm trying to think of a big sport night in metaphor. Festival of sports nights, we could say.
Yeah, this is one that I wanted to. It just right now it feels a little relevant and exciting. So this is a story from this past summer about Jewish-Israeli UFC fighter Natan Levy, who has had success in MMA, who challenged a white supremacist, a supporter of Nick Fuentes, is one of those online rabble-rousing white supremacists. I don't really pay much attention to who that is, but challenged his supporter to fight him in the ring. And he, again, a professional MMA fighter, and this, I'm going to say goofus looking.
I think goofus is like generous. If you guys were to imagine, you listeners, what a anti-Semitic internet troll would look like, I think you'd be almost there.
Well, the guy basically, he really had like troll doll hair, a chin strap beard, gets into the ring with Natan and just gets his claw cleaned. And I don't know what to say. Sometimes it's nice to see an anti-Semite get beat up. And I thought that was a great story from this year.
One thing that's really great about this is during this fight, Levy is holding on to the anti-Semites, yelling like, Jews are not evil. Jews are not, that Jews are not evil. And sort of forcing him by submission to renounce his anti-Semitic views.
Come on, finish it. Oh, sorry. Keep going. No sorry. Shut up.
Hey, sorry. What the fuck you mean sorry?
Shut up with that.
Get out. Get out.
Which is something I think that every anti-Semite actually goes to bed like physically afraid of.
Yes, and I think we should see an ever-growing amount of anti-Semites in the octagon with trained Jewish MMA professionals to do a little jujitsu on them and make them tap out.
6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust. Murdered in the Holocaust.
Okay, that's good.
That's why I thought that was a great story. So there you have it. I mean, I think that's that's a wrap for Kislev 5786. Oh, I can never remember what year it is.
I'm still writing 5785 on all my checks, but I want to mention, Jamie, I want to thank you for being the shamash of our Hanukkah of Jewish sports stories. That you
thank you. That's very nice. It's 5784.
5784. Okay.
So you've been post-dating all your.
I've been post-dating all my checks. A lot of my business suppliers are going to be very unhappy when they figure this out.
They're going to be unhappy with you writing that date on their checks in the first place. But
yes, I don't know. I do work with many people of the Jewish persuasion.
Well, let's leave it there. I think we're going to leave it there for the common format year of 2023. We'll see everybody in the new secular year. We wish everybody a happy Hanukkah. We wish our producer Mike a Merry Christmas as well.
A very Merry Christmas and happy Hanukkah with his children and family. Before we go, I have one very last quick thing to mention. We talk a lot on this podcast about Mike Jacobs All-Stars, people whose names sound Jewish but are not. I would like to introduce you to a player for the Prince George Cougars of the WHL. In discussing Andrew Crystal, finding him, he is a boy from Mayerthorpe, Alberta.
Okay.
There's no interest that he is Jewish, but I would like to introduce you to Prince George Cougar star right wing Cohen Zimmer.
Wow. Cohen Zimmer sounds like a law firm I've dealt with.
Yes, Cohen Zimmer, I think, sounds like a name that an anti-Semite or a non-Jew would make up as a Jewish person. But Cohen Zimmer is not Jewish.
Right.
By any sense. We have the Jaden Schwartzes, that sort of type group from rural prairies. But Cohen Zimmer, and I want to spell his name for you, pronounced Cohen Zimmer. It is Koehn, pronounced Cohen.
Okay.
Ziemmer, pronounced Zimmer. So It could be Kian Zimmer or Cohen Zimmer, really, if you're looking at it that way. But according to the pronunciation in the media guide, it's Cohen Zimmer.
Wow, Cohen Zimmer sounds like that's like the vocals listing on some tracks from Death of a Ladies Man. Assuming Bob Dylan is credited under his original name. So somewhere. Cohen, Zimmerman, and Ginsburg. That's
exactly.
Like,
Cohen, Zimmerman, Ginsburg. That's great.
Anyways, that's pretty great. That's a great Mike Jacobs All-Star. I hope he has a happy Hanukkah as well. If someone confuses him for Jewish, and I hope all our listeners do too. I mean, this has been an interesting year for us. We love doing this. We're going to keep doing it as long as they'll have us. And focus on all the great Jewish sports stories. Focus on the good. All the great things we want to celebrate about Judaism and Jewish sports in 2024.
We're here to spread Jewish achievement and not necessarily, spread hummus, not Hamas, as they say.
Sure. As always, we're produced by the Canadian Jewish News. Our executive producer is Michael Freeman. You can find our podcast on the Canadian Jewish News website, thecjn.ca. And follow us on Twitter, where we continue to have a presence for some reason, at Menschwarmers, for
it's not
Jewish
X.
sports news.
Are we not calling it X now?
Whatever.
You know what? I think we're part of the great replacement of X, as Elon Musk would believe.
All right. Yeah, I guess. I mean, we're he's back on our side. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, he's not chasing us off, so who cares? I try to spend as little of my time as possible thinking about people who bring me no pleasure. But yeah, follow us on Twitter at Menschwarmers, and you'll get tweets from us about Jewish goings on during this holiday season. And please like and subscribe to our podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks so much for joining us. See you in 2024.
The Dunfield Retirement Residence offers customized living options to complement your independent, active lifestyle. Welcome home. Welcome to the Dunfield. Visit us at thedunfield.com to book a personal tour.